but it was more about the building and actually the refurbishment and how that would work. So I did a master's in quantity surveying because I am boring and I am that analytical brain. But for me, that really gave that insight of actually the bricks and mortar, understanding the fundamentals all the way down to kind of the grain of sand. What are we in and what is that investment? So you can understand it from the inside out. Unfortunately, I put all of that, I love it when people go, how much did you spend on your uni careers and uni life, and then tried to get a job afterwards. And I even went into Savills, and they would only offer me a graduate job. And at that point, I just went, what have I done? All of this, and the people that I was up against, I was 3 or 4 years old, having done X, Y, and Z, and I was going to be earning 10 grand a year on a graduate job back then. And I just said, no way, this is just ridiculous. Came down to London. So actually, I went out for a couple of jobs, and lo and behold, a state agency was up and the earnings were there. So for my sins, I ended up becoming an estate agent, which after all of that education, my parents couldn't believe it. But in the end of the day, I think it gave a hands-on approach to actually what I was doing. So I ended up working for Dexter's. I was their poster boy when they first started up, and basically ran all of their central offices as I moved through. And so, yeah, it ended up being their top salesperson. Didn't even know I was good at sales until I got through it. It was more about I understood the core bits and the core elements, and I was putting all those pieces together. But actually, it didn't take me long to get to the point where I was at the top and I was getting not bored, but I was never destined to be that alone. Yeah. And for me, it was seeing, especially being in London properties, and I was all the way into Knightsbridge at that point and Mayfair, and was selling all kinds of stuff. I realised that some people were buying things to split into flats and doing kind of what I looked at doing from the outset is that kind of investment vehicle. So I always thought about how can I get into that and go through. Lo and behold, I had a buyer that came to me, and I told him why he shouldn't buy that property because he was looking at it wrongly. And that was actually, an old-time friend now and mentor of mine that basically poached me, and we created Clarendon House Capital out of that. Which was, really fascinating. That was the first time back in 2014, 2015 that we basically built this company together, which we were taking people's money from that were doing stock markets, doing everything else, but they didn't have that ability to get into London real estate, and we were finding assets. I actually couldn't find as many as I thought we were going to be able to find to engineer, which is obviously we didn't have the tech that you and we have now. God, if we had that then we might be doing something very different. But, I think at that point we did, we bought over, I sourced and developed over 50, 60 million pounds worth of property in London in a year and a half. And even in Sweden ourselves, in Stockholm and things. Unfortunately, politics changed. We had Brexit, we had lots of different things, so our investment kind of, grew to a halt. But the thought process was, how do we find property? That's where I went to next, going, well, this startup didn't work. It wasn't because of anything else. It's just because I couldn't find them and I couldn't sell them. And that was where the whole thought process of having a marketplace to help landlords and investors find just that. You go on Rightmove and Zoopla, and unless you're looking in a postcode that and in and out, you're not going to find anything. It doesn't show you that type of analysis. You have to sift through 300 houses in one postcode just to find a buy-to-let or a HMO. And that just wasn't working. It was inefficient.
Yep.
So, I actually thought about having this marketplace and with a couple of people, but unfortunately I wasn't first to it. And actually that was Vesta. And so, I basically came in. Russell, the old CEO, he basically just stepped in when they received 5 million, and I wasn't going to raise that myself. So I said to him, look, love to jump in and see if we can grow it. So